What would you like to remove from the earth? People will make more. I'd rather remove climate change than years and those who know about climate change but still choose to not give a fuck. Edit. After some pondering, I think it makes more sense to remove the mentality of active ignorance towards climate change / the environment instead of committing a mass genocide. Friend is a district attorney that has to deal with such cases, needs psychiatric help to get through this, but is still keeping doing it because he wants to get these guys into prison. However, one of his colleagues is now certified as unfit to work with 30 due to depression caused by having to screen all this material 9 to 5 over months. Doctor, I once was addicted to some ranking suited Leos because I hated Leo's at that age, but turned into their BFF and servant when I found out they were after a child molester, child porn case, /TL. Doctor, I once worked for a small ISP years ago. One day, a knock came at the door of our data center, which was strange enough by itself. Nobody came there unannounced. 2 men in suits flashed Leo credentials and explained they were needing access to certain customers' email, browsing history if we had it, basically anything and everything having to do with this person's internet life. Me being me, I said not without a search warrant signed by a judge. Yep, just like this one right here you're showing me. I grumbled about finding someone who could actually help them, as this wasn't my department, which was true. I just sat closest to that outside door, as I was wandering away mumbling about didn't they have anything better to do than harass some dude for downloading the anarchist cookbook or something like that, when the guy apparently 8 and charged said would it but us some courtesy and empathy if you found out this was a child sex and pornography case we're working on. Wow, I'm an asshole suddenly. Step right this way, gentlemen. You can set up whatever you need in this spare office room. I'll go activate the line rate guide port for each of you at the 3 workstations and bring you the static IP info shortly. Can I get you a cup of coffee or a bottle of water? What can I do to help you make sure these subhumans get the electric chair? Honestly, nuclear power is the only thing that's likely to save humanity. It's technology that we have right now that can reduce the impact of electricity on the environment by a substantial amount. The Simpsons has unironically done huge damage to the environment by demonizing nuclear power. Every serious accident, Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, was at a plant with technology half a century or more out of date of what we would build today. It is certainly not a permanent solution, but if we just had 80% of the world running on nuclear power, we would buy ourselves more time to get to a permanent solution, and anyone fighting the gap technology because it's not good enough are going to doom us just as surely as those who aren't interested in progressing. Every serious accident, Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, was at a plant with technology half a century or more out of date of what we would build today. You know, you got my attention with that. I've not been keen on nuclear power but never considered the advancements we've made. Thank you for giving me something to reconsider. Actually, Chernobyl had all the safety protocols for operation and testing that were necessary to prevent the tragedy. There were multiple manual overrides that were demanded by politicians who had no engineering knowledge of power plants that were trying to force unrealistic results. The plant at Fukushima had a susceptibility to a tsunami that was documented well before the plant was damaged, and yet ignored because why would anyone want to spend the money? 3 Mile Island would literally have been prevented with better sensors. It was only an issue at all because of how long it took for them to realize where the problem was. A relief valve stuck open. Modern technology would have immediately diagnosed the problem and no incident would have occurred. Modern technology and sound engineering standards would have made every accident more or less physically impossible. Love seeing these comments. Thanks for keeping an open mind to learn something new. As a mechanical engineer, I've always supported nuclear, and after my master's degree program, It gave me an even higher appreciation for it. Nuclear is absolutely the way to go. As the commenter above said, it's not as clean, but it's also immensely powerful. I'm glad. I very legitimately believe that enough investment in nuclear power can buy us enough time to advance renewables technology, and be there as a baseline for inconsistent renewables. What I mean by that is solar doesn't work during nighttime, wind doesn't work on calm days, geothermal is limited generally to specific places. Nuclear can give a reasonably clean baseline while we push the possibilities with renewables and discover safer and more sustainable ways to power our future. There are plant designs that are self-regulating. Literally, if all the cooling systems were to fail, the nuclear reaction stops and nothing happens. Also, for those worried about nuclear waste storage, spent fuel rods can be reprocessed, recycled. France does. The US doesn't, because it's cheaper to use new rods than recycle the old ones. Nuclear waste literally wouldn't be a problem if the nuclear power plants were required to pay to have their waste reprocessed, recycled. Yeah, the insane thing about nuclear waste is the main byproduct of nuclear fission fuel is ... literally more fuel, just in a different form that needs to be used differently. Fission fragments are horrible pollutants, but they're also so minuscule that one bunker facility could safely house 100% of the entire world's production of them this far. Honestly, the only people I've spoken to that are against nuclear power don't understand it. Molten salt reactors, MSRs, proved to be a suitable alternative by using a thorium core, but since you can't weaponize thorium, the government scrapped it. Best part was that if they lost power they'd go cold instead of hot, meaning they couldn't melt down, and they produced far less radioactive waste with a much shorter half-life and didn't require anywhere near the amount of water as standard nuclear reactors. But since you can't weaponize thorium, the government scrapped it. This is a conspiracy theory. The real reason behind nobody using thorium is because thorium is a cunt of an element to deal with. India tried to develop thorium reactors for decades before they got their hands on uranium, and they were entirely unsuccessful. Uranium is one of the few elements that is super easy to keep a reaction going. You just lump a bunch of it close together and hey presto, a functional reactor. Thorium, on the other hand, actually requires a lot of other trickery to get the reaction to start. I'm super pro thorium, they're really cool reactors. I'm also pro MSR, but don't forget, they aren't exclusively thorium reactors. You can make uranium MSRs and they're as safe as thorium ones. ETA. Also, you theoretically can still make weapons using thorium reactors. It's just that the time required to yield large amounts of weapons-grade materials would be enormous. It is called the self-fulfilling prophecy. It actually works on people of all ages, but for kids it is scary how fast it can poison them. It is similar to labeling theory. If you label someone as deviant, by calling them naughty or nasty or a lowlife, that sort of thing, regardless if they actually are those things, they will become more likely to commit deviant or criminal behavior. It is like when you get punished for something you didn't do as a kid and you act out, because, if you are going to get punished anyway, might as well do the thing they are punishing you for. I think this is in part why we like reading fiction like Harry Potter, cause he definitely grew up being told he was a worthless piece of trash, but for some reason managed to ignore his relatives' hatefulness and became a good person anyway. The most likely realistic outcome is that he would have either committed suicide from depression in his teenage years or become as heartless as Malloy appeared to be. It's an anomaly how little he was psychologically scarred by the Dursleys compared to how most children in his shoes would be scarred. I got my 2-year-old one of the kid-friendly versions. It basically just has YouTube and Netflix on it so I can distract him with his favorite cartoons during car rides, or put on lullabies before bed. It's supposed to be scratch and smash resistant, but it seems pretty flimsy to be honest. The problem isn't giving kids tech too early, it's giving them free rein with no oversight or parental controls that causes the problems. I don't know what I'd do if I found my son browsing 4chan before he's at least 29, that crap is terrifying. Cigarettes. They are expensive, extremely addictive and lead to health problems, and the worst fucking thing, they give you no high. It's just the worst drug ever, has all the downsides and don't even make you feel something. I have been smoking for like 10 octoseconds, not a lot but daily, and I hate this habit. I always need to go buy some or feel the urge to smoke while inside a restaurant with someone and have to go outside. Sorry to inform you, mate, but there is a point where you cause more damage to the environment by eating plants than animals, because humans needs a dose meat no matter what, and you needs to eat much more for this reason. It's a good thing to decrease it, and for healthy reasons, but we can't just get along without it. And what is bad with ambitious? And what do you think will happen when 6 billion people disappear at random? Who is going to fix your electricity when your power goes out? Because we have understaffed electricians, who can't get materials because there is no one to make the things they fix stuff with. Where will you get your fruits, vegetables, and meats, as well as other food products, when almost all of the people producing it just disappeared? See the issue? That isn't the solution. That is a larger problem than the one we already have. Toxic and unreasonable people. Nobody needs them in their lives. They only need themselves. Ugh. You can't believe how much I would like something like the Infinity Glove and just snap and boom, all assholes are gone. 99% of all problems would disappear. Edit. Perhaps this sounded a bit harsh. What I really meant is to have those personality traits disappeared, not necessarily the people. I would remove men before people start downvoting. Hear me out first. People always say men are useless and women can make the world better than it is, so let them do it then. Give them 100 years to make the world better. However, if they can't, men will come back to fill in the gaps and help where they are needed. Men in the meanwhile will be chilling in limbo with their games and anime. Congratulations. We now produce minimal protein needed for human survival. Animals' populations are now going out of control as we are no longer killing and eating them, and many humans are dying because they are no longer getting necessary levels of protein in their diet. Haha, that you tried the animal population thing. That's total bullshit and is easy to research. We breed those numbers of animals into existence, you clown. Go read up about it to look like less of a tool. Just because we might breed cows, sheep, and goats, doesn't mean wild animal populations are bred by us. Keyword wild, bozo. There are multiple studies about deer overpopulation in areas where hunters aren't allowed to hunt. Our capitalism. Go here, get a brain cell and stop advocating for a system that has never worked and has killed more people than fascism, and start advocating for an economic system that works and is built on human rights and voluntary trade and commerce and economic and democratic freedom. Again, let me tell about the system that doesn't. Capitalism. As Chomsky puts it, there is little moral difference between chattel slavery and renting oneself to an owner or wage slavery. It's hard to think the system is unfair when you're in a position in society where you're comfortable with your life. Many people are not so lucky, but it's easy to blame them for it instead of the system. Just a reminder, you're not alone in the world, and what you see around you is not the only reality but only your own. Do yourself a favor and learn about historical materialism. You're welcome. How am I wage slave when slavery is an involuntary stealing of labor while having a job is voluntary trade of labor for commerce? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I am not in a comfortable place and ignore suffering. I just know that government program haven't helped that. Will charities work better? At least capitalism has worked, and in most commie countries, every cent poor and suffering, no one's in a comfortable place. Would you be capable of eating, owning, renting a house, or having your basic human needs covered if you didn't have a job. I'm from a capitalist country where 25% of the people don't have a job. There simply aren't enough jobs for everyone. That's one of the 1,000 things that's wrong about capitalism. Many of these people are desperate, have been evicted and can't afford clothes or even food, and it's not their fault, it's the system's. If capitalism was fair, these people would be able to have a home, food and their basic needs covered, health, education. Also, how many people do you know that love their job? How many people are simply doing something they hate every day because that's their only option? On top of that, some companies get billions and most workers receive the bare minimum while CEOs have more money than what they can spend in a few lifetimes. Do you really think that's okay? BTW, people die every day because of capitalism. People starving in Africa equals capitalists exploiting their countries for profit. Child slavery. Go to r/fucknessel if you want to learn a bit more about this. Sweatshops in Asia. People surviving in horrible conditions in supposedly first world countries. In America, people die of preventable diseases every day because they can't afford going to a doctor. It's also important to note that advanced communism, if we think of communism as an objective system of society and not just anything we want to call it, has not yet existed apart from in some kind of embryonic form, as in the early years of the Russian Revolution and the European revolutions after WWI, the Paris Commune and some others. What people tend to call communism has absolutely nothing to do with what it really is. We've been brainwashed our entire lives to be individualistic and to not give a fuck about others, and so we justify how wonderful the system is. In reality, the fairest society would be a socialist one, in which people have their needs covered in spite of the system's failures, and that is definitely not the case in capitalist societies nowadays. This question gets asked every single day, and the only thing these uneducated bigots say is religion, religion, religion. My answer is intolerance. If everyone tolerated other beliefs, unlike all these toxic atheists, the world would be an amazing place. And yes, I'm aware that religious people can also be intolerant, and it is not okay either. Our toxic all-or-nothing approach to politics, on both sides of the spectrum, we've put the uncompromising ideal on a pedestal, and anyone who changes an opinion is automatically weak, or a flip-flopper. Nobody listens to each other anymore, and that sucks. Because talking to each other is how we ultimately accomplish real change. The downsides of colonialism. As someone who is interested in foreign languages, I can tell you that countless treasures of the linguistic world have been lost and replaced with European languages, not to mention the amount of genocide, slavery, and cultural extinction that colonialism caused. If only Europeans could have traded with locals, aided their economies, exchanged knowledge with them, and let them rule themselves with their languages and customs, I think the world would be a cooler and more diverse place today. A lot of things like corporations that use up the world's resources till it's dry, e.g. Nestle, cigar companies etc., pollution, littering, global warming, stands on Twitter, scammers, cheaters, people who like to ruin people's fun and enjoyment. A lot of stuff is bad, some we can change, the others we can try to reduce at best. The best we can do is keep trying our best to help the world. Okay, because of overpopulation and depression that proceeds from it because we aren't putting our primal instincts to work, amongst other many things. Loneliness is a bodily function, like hunger. Hunger makes you pay attention to your physical needs. Loneliness makes you pay attention to your social needs. Your body cares about your social needs, because millions of years ago, it was a great indicator of how likely you were to survive. Natural selection rewarded our ancestors for collaboration, and for forming connections with each other. Our brains grew and become more and more fine-tuned to recognize what others thought and felt, and to form and sustain social bonds. Being social became part of our biology. You were born into groups of 50 to 150 people, which you stayed with for the rest of your life. Getting enough calories, staying safe and warm, or caring for offsprings was practically impossible alone. Being together meant survival. Being alone meant death, so it was crucial that you got along with others.